Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by MiloTree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the show. This is your host, Jillian Leslie. I'm also co-founder of the MiloTree pop-up app, Catch My Party. I am a business coach and really a business translator. I take what's working in blogging and online business, break it down so you can use these strategies yourself. Before I get started, I would like to invite you to join my Facebook group. If you go to Facebook and you search for Blogger Genius, you'll see it. It's called the Share and Grow Your Blog Traffic group. And in this group, you will get to grow your traffic and your social media followers. And I do Facebook Lives and workshops, and I'm there for advice. Please join. I think you'll really like the community. For today's episode, I have Jessica Stansberry on the show, and she is a YouTuber. In fact, she has over 100,000 YouTube subscribers, and she teaches women how to grow online businesses. If you have been listening to the podcast, you know that for 2021, I am advising everybody to show their face on camera, whether that be in lives or videos. And this is really what Jessica and I talk a lot about. There is no better way to grow an audience than for people to hear you, see you, learn what you're all about. I think this is the perfect episode for those of you who are starting to dip your toe in this water. So without further delay, here is my delightful interview with Jessica Stansberry. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I found you. I was telling you this before I pressed record. I was looking at YouTube videos. I think I was searching for Instagram or something like that, and you were suggested to me, and I started watching your videos, and I was like, wow, I really like what she is talking about. And then I reached out to you and said, would you come on my show? And you said yes. So here you are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, YouTube is my main content platform. And so for the most part, that's how most people find me. But it kind of, it's fun to see how people go down that path, you know?
Absolutely. So will you share how you got into social media, how you started teaching social media, and what your origin story is?
Of course. So I have two kids. One is 10 and one is 7. And when I was just out of college, I got the normal corporate job like everybody else does, right? And here, I live in a very small town, so I'm very secluded. I'm 2 hours from a Target, 3 hours from the airport. Yeah, your face says it all. And it's so true. Like I'm super secluded. And so in our county, there's probably only like 3 to 4 companies to work for that are actually any good and like provide insurance and good pay and things like that. And I got a job at one of those like coveted companies, right? And I hated it with a fiery, burning passion. I was in customer service, which is just not my bag, you know? And when I had my first son, I was like, you know what? I don't want to send him to daycare knowing, and then like go to my job that I hate every day. If I loved my job, it'd be a whole different thing. So basically I quit my job without a plan. And the only plan at that point was to do graphic design on the side. So I have, my degree is in advertising. So I had a little bit of like graphic knowledge to fall back on. And so I just basically did like tiny little jobs like business cards or greeting cards or like whatever, and made no money. Then I stumbled into blogging. And because of the way I am, I was like, these websites are ugly. So I learned how to design my own blog. And at that point, then people would find my blog and be like, wait, who designed this? And I'd be like, oh, that's me. And so then they would hire me to design theirs. And I opened a full like web design company. And so it took me about 5 years to get to the point where I was taking it seriously, where it wasn't a hobby anymore, where it wasn't just enough money to get us through kind of thing. And then that was in 2015. And in 2015, I just basically like busted into the online world. I had a Facebook group. I started my first podcast. I started my YouTube channel the next year. Just kind of did everything to make myself noticeable, and kind of transformed from there. So I stopped doing web design in 2016 and started really teaching and doing the more like behind the scenes, course driven, I'm going to teach you how to do it, not do it for you type of thing. So that's kind of how I've merged all the way over here.
Got it. And you were saying your biggest platform is YouTube, and you started on YouTube when? 5 years ago?
No, less than 5 years. So I started in 2016, but that was it was kind of like one of those, I'm just going to put up a video because it works well with my blog post things. It was basically, I needed a visual for my blog post, and I was like, hey, I'm going to put up a video. And that video was how to create an interactive Gmail signature. And it did really well for me at the time. It still doesn't have a ton of views, but it did well for me at the time. And it was probably a year before I made the realization that I was growing on YouTube without trying. And I only had about 500 subscribers at that point, but I had never tried to grow it. So I was like, oh, wow, like it's growing without me like forcing it to grow. And so in 2017, in the latter half of 2017 is when I was like, okay, I'm taking this serious. And I went from 500 subscribers to about 2,000 in a couple of months. And then I've just kept going from there.
And right
so
now,
I'm at like,
you have over 100,000 YouTube subscribers.
Yeah, I just hit 100 maybe a month ago. So I'm at like 103, 104,000, which is exciting.
That's amazing. Okay, so if I were thinking, so you also are active on Instagram, and what other platforms are you active on?
So Instagram is my main social platform right now. YouTube is a search engine, and yes, it has the social element, but I consider it a content creation platform, and Instagram is my social platform. But I'm also very active on Facebook. However, Facebook was like my first platform. We set it up on autopilot, and I have a team who manages that entire process. I'm personally never on Facebook. So I'm basically on all the platforms, but they either auto post or my team handles it, and Instagram is my main platform.
Interesting. So you still, though, do how many videos a week on YouTube, would you say?
Yeah, so I have been doing one a week for the last like 5 months, and we're increasing that again to 2 a week right now. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been like a ebb and flow schedule over there. I've done 1 a week. I've done 2 a week. I've done 3 a week. And honestly, like the more content you do, the better off you're going to be, the more you're throwing at the algorithm, right? But also it's a lot of work. And so I basically 2 a week is a sweet spot for me. I feel like I can handle that my team can handle that we can, make that happen. And I feel like it helps me grow a ton. So that's why we're switching back to 2 a week.
Okay. And I have to ask you, how many people on your team, who's on your team, and what do they do?
Yeah. So up until this year, I'd had several team members who were part-time contractors. Up until this year, I would have like an OBM who would be, a part-time contractor, a virtual assistant.
Wait, what's an OBM?
An online business manager. So it's basically a virtual assistant on crack.
Got it. Okay.
So basically they would like manage the whole thing, and I would have a VA, and I would have an editor for my podcast, an editor for my videos. And I'm trying to think if I have anybody else, just like random contractors here and there. But in the summer of this year, I actually made my first full-time hire. So I have a full-time employee. She is just like, her title right now is just assistant. But she does a lot of the behind the scenes. She does almost everything that all of those other contractors did. I do still have a video editor on like contract, but I do a lot of the editing myself too, basically because I know how I want my videos to look. And when I hand them off to somebody else, I feel like I lose a little bit of connection to the content. And since that is my main platform, I like to keep that connection. So it just kind of depends on the piece of content, but I do have an editor still on tap, and she does my podcast and my YouTube videos.
Now, what do you think what role does the podcast play, say, versus the YouTube channel? How are these pieces, like you were saying, like Instagram is where you're social, and I want to dig into that, but where does the podcast fit in versus YouTube?
Yeah, such a good question. So YouTube is how people find me. YouTube is the discovery platform, just like you did. So YouTube is, people are searching for things and they either find my videos or I'm suggested to them, but nonetheless, that's how they find me. And I'm leaning more into making it be like a two-tiered strategy over there, where they find me, but also that's a big part of my nurturing strategy as well. I actually just released a video today that, like, as we're recording this, about how I have made the mistake on YouTube of just focusing on search-driven content and not really trying to create like personal content on the platform that people need to connect with us, right? I've always pointed them somewhere else. That's what Instagram is for me. So right now, though, YouTube is the discovery platform. From YouTube, I send them off to Instagram generally. And then from Instagram, I send them over to the podcast. So that's kind of like the triangular effect of what goes on. And sometimes people do find me on Instagram or come in a different way. But essentially the podcast then is to go deeper. My YouTube videos are 20 minutes or less, and usually, unless I'm long-winded, but usually they're 20 minutes or less. And my podcast episodes are an hour, and so they find me on YouTube. They learn to like me on YouTube. They, want to know more on YouTube and to really dive in and know more and get to know me more. And for me to pour into them more, that's where the podcast comes in.
Got it. Okay, now I have to ask you this, which is, how do you monetize? So you've got all of these nurturing systems, but ultimately at the end of the day, how are you making money?
Yeah, that's a good question. So YouTube, I am monetized on YouTube. And I mean, just on the platform
ads.
from the ads, I make more than I did in my corporate job just from that. So that's a pretty substantial piece. But I also do sponsorships. That's something I'm leaning more into in the new year, is doing more sponsorships on my YouTube channel, and, taking on more sponsored content. And so that's a stream of income as well. And then I'm heavy in affiliate marketing. And so my podcast, all the ads on my podcast are for affiliates who do recurring revenue share. So essentially, one of them is ConvertKit and the other one is ClickUp right now. And both are systems I love. And both, if someone signs up through my link, I get a percentage of their monthly fee. And so I really lean into that big time for the podcast. I find that I'm going to make more money doing that than trying to find a big sponsor who is going to try and dictate my content. And I'm really strict on YouTube as well with my sponsorships. My sponsors are not allowed to dictate my content. And if they want to, we don't work with them. And so because of the way the algorithm works, I know what content works best and I know where to fit their ads in, So those are the more passive streams of income, but I also sell courses. I've sold courses for years. That's always been my main stream of income, is courses and digital products of some sort. So workbooks, templates, things like that. And then of course, courses. And I do some consulting and things here locally. I don't actually do that online. That's because I don't like to do it necessarily. It's not my favorite thing to do. However, with local businesses, because we're so secluded, because we're so small, there's nobody else here to help them. And so I really enjoy working with local businesses to do that. So that's a little bit of my income. I don't do a ton of that. It has to be the right person and the right business model for me to want to help in that way.
Got it. Because we have our own businesses online, because I do the podcast, because we coach other entrepreneurs, I came up with 9 tips for bloggers and online entrepreneurs to be successful in 2021. And one of those tips was to show your face on video.
Yeah.
That a lot of times bloggers want to hide behind their content and pretty photos. And maybe they'll take a photo of their hands or every so often a photo of themselves. And I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are about that, because I am pushing people to do that. And I too am pushing myself to be going live on Facebook and Instagram and even YouTube. So talk to me about how that works, for what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean you're spot on. People have to know us before they can like us, before they can trust us, right? And that's the whole process of getting them to click our affiliate link or getting them to buy our course or getting them to buy our thing or whatever that is. So the quickest way to do that is by getting them to see us. They can see our mannerisms, they can see our, facial expressions, they can see it's fun, they feel like they know us. And I have been in weird places. I was in a bathroom at a conference one time, and I was talking to someone else through the door. Like we were both peeing. And I hear somebody else come in and go, "Oh my gosh, Jessica Stansberry, is that you?" And all she heard was my voice, right? Like she didn't even see my face. But I was like, yeah. And she said, I need a selfie with you. And I was like, well, let me get done peeing and then we'll take care of this. And when I came out of the stall, she was like, "You look exactly like you do on the internet." And I was like, well, that would be weird if I didn't, because I do, that's a weird thing to say. Not a weird thing to say. Just, I think it's funny that people change the way they look on the internet or whatever, but it led into a conversation about how one of the big examples I like to give is back when, phones were just phones and you couldn't video on them and things. Like when I was a teenager and I'd get a new boyfriend, right? And we would talk on the phone and I would envision, without realizing I was envisioning it, what his bedroom or what his house or what his mom or whatever looked like, right? I had to use my imagination. And then I would meet his mom or see his house or see, whatever. And it would be completely different than what I expected, right? And it was almost it almost led to disappointment. It almost led to whatever, because we had created this thing in our head. And if people are constantly only reading our written word or constantly only hearing our voice, then we're leading them up to be disappointed or to have different expectations than what the reality is on the other end. So one, that's it. We have to, we just need to tell people who we are, and we need to show them with our face, But secondarily to that, the generations that are active right now they just don't want to see brands anymore. They want to see people, and that's all there is to it. And the brands, if you took two different brands and they were doing exactly the same thing, and one of them was consistently showing their face on video and one of them was not, the one on video will grow 10 times faster every time. And so absolutely, I completely agree with you. Video has been a game changer for me, and it can be hard. When I first started on YouTube, I had gained about 15 pounds at that point. I had lost a bunch of weight after my second son. I'd been in the best shape of my life. We went to Hawaii. I was I'm wearing the bikini, I'm doing the things, And when my business got really busy, I gained some weight. And I'd gained about 15 pounds, which looking back was nothing, because now I've gained 40. But I remember wanting to get started on video, wanting to create video and telling myself, I'll do that when I lose the weight. Mm-hmm. And if I would have done that, I would have never started. I still haven't lost that weight. I gained more. And so it's hard, and we get in our own heads, but do you know nobody has ever once, not one time, and YouTube can be mean, not one time has somebody commented on my weight. Not one time, And
the thing that I tell everybody, and I tell this to my 13-year-old daughter who is sleeping in that room right there, is this, and especially because she's 13, and that is that time when we are so self-conscious. Not that we're not as grown-ups. Mm-hmm. However, I say this, my podcast, it's not the Jillian show. Mm-hmm. What I can do for somebody who's listening. And it's it's a little insulting. What do you mean it's not the Jillian show? What do you mean it's not all about me? However, by saying that, it shrinks me down and all my insecurities that people say are looking at my hair, or they're commenting, or I'm stumbling and not saying things in a super eloquent way, or who knows, but it becomes less about me and more about me being helpful. And so I say that to my daughter, like, honestly, nobody's looking at your knobby knees, or whatever it is. And so when you can like, nobody is commenting, Jessica, on like how you look. It's not an accident, because they're getting value from you. So it's weird. For me, it's a huge mindset shift and helps me go, oh, see this pimple? Like, how you have a pimple and you meet somebody back in the day, you met somebody and you'd be like, look at my pimple. And then the person would go, I never even noticed your pimple, because we're in ourselves and we love, I'm the center of my own universe as you are of yours. And my daughter is of hers. But while that is true, it can also be so limiting. And when you can shrink yourself down and recognize, oh, I'm just here because somebody's getting value from this.
Yeah.
It helps put things in perspective, and it makes me braver.
I completely agree. And something that I say a lot to people who are struggling with that is, is it like it's selfish at that point for you not to show up because of your own insecurities, because there's someone out there who needs exactly what you need to say.
Absolutely.
And so, because everybody, there's 10,000 people who, whatever video you found of mine, there's probably 10,000 people who had done a similar video, or 10 people or 100 people or whatever, right? But in that moment, you needed my voice, right? And in that moment, this person needs my voice. And tomorrow they may need this voice, and that's okay, right? But I feel like I'm being selfish if I'm stopping myself from providing value because of my own insecurities. And that goes even further than YouTube. Like, I don't have makeup on today. And so I will get on my Instagram stories, and I used to have to be perfect. I used to, or in my version of perfect, right? Like, I used to have to make sure my hair was done and I had makeup on and I, whatever. And before I would get on my Instagram stories, that meant I was holding back on telling people things they needed to hear until I was ready, which feels completely selfish. So now, my Instagram followers totally know that I will show up looking a hot mess if I have something to tell them, And I think that's a really good mindset too, is like, you're being selfish by taking away that knowledge that you could provide, or that help or guidance or whatever that you could provide someone else, because you are worried about what you look like, what you sound like, what you whatever like. And you're 100% right. Nobody's paying attention to that.
And the other thing that I say is, think of all the people who want to be doing video because they have something to say, but their insecurities are holding them back. If you can push yourself to do it, you are in the top 0.1%. What a competitive advantage.
Totally. And I say this is an example I use a lot, but my accent held me back for a really long time. If you watch a video or a movie, I'm sorry, not a video, but like a movie or something, always the Southern person is portrayed as the stupid person. Always. It will always be the case. It is what it is, And one time in college, I had a professor tell us, we were in a broadcasting class. We were in a broadcasting class, and he was like, if you ever want to make money with your voice, you will lose your accents. As it was a college full of North Carolina people, like with all these accents. And I remember at that moment being like, no, screw you. Like, I'm not doing that. But it held me back. So when I first started my business, I would be afraid to get on the phone with people because I was afraid that, like, I had just quoted them this, they had seen my work, but I knew in my head, I didn't actually know, but in my head, I thought, if I, talk, they're going to think she's dumb and I'm going to find somebody different. And now the biggest thing that people remember about me, the thing that makes me distinguishable, the first question you asked me, right, is always, hey, I love your accent. Where are you from? And that makes me memorable. That makes me, stand out. And so that insecurity that I had, like I was insecure, I let it hold me back, was the one thing that made people relate to me.
I would say it makes you softer. It makes you approachable. Like first thing I noticed, you seem so warm.
Yeah. And it's funny because in my first podcast, our intro, I co-hosted it, and our intro said sassy Southern girl. Cause I am if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm an 8. I will tell it like it is. I will tell you the truth. Like I do not steer away from that, but I think my accent like softens it a little bit. So it's like, I can tell you something that somebody else could say and it would sound mean. And when it's coming out of my mouth, it's kind of just like sweet mean. So it's one of those things where it's an asset. It's a good thing. It's something that I am proud of now. But if I would have let it hold me back, I still wouldn't be where I am today. Same thing with my weight, right? Like I wouldn't have hit 100,000 subscribers. I wouldn't have a multi-6-figure business. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't have any of it,
Yep. Now let's talk about somebody who really wants to kill it in 2021. And she has a blog. Although let's start there. Do you recommend somebody who's growing an online business have a blog?
Yeah, for sure. You need to have some type of searchable content, whether that's a blog, YouTube, whatever, Pinterest, but you really can't be searchable on Pinterest without content to send them back to. So essentially, I think you need to have some type of searchable content. And honestly, a blog is the only searchable content that you actually own.
Right. And remember, it's the only space on the internet that you own. And I'm going to plug us. If you don't have a blog, we offer blog services. We will set up your WordPress. Go to MiloTree/blogstart and we'll get you set up and optimized. But yes, so I wanted your honest opinion. I'm totally like-minded. You need a space on the internet that is yours, because otherwise you are a sharecropper. And not that you don't want to be on all these platforms, and they're incredibly valuable. You need a place where you can park yourself and have a hub for your business. Okay, so I want to start this, or I'm working on my online business, and I have a blog, and I have all of my social media channels. Where for 2021 do you recommend I lean in first, and where I'm going to get my biggest bang for my buck?
Video is where it's at. I mean, video is where it's at. Like whatever that looks like for you. I am a big believer in YouTube because you have the mixture. You have the mixture of searchable content. It can be paired with your blog so fun fact, there's this like golden star that Google will give out. And it goes to only people who are blogging and YouTubing and pairing the content together. And that's exactly how I grew at the beginning. So if you are blogging, let's say you do a blog on, I'm looking around my desk at something, like the best iPhone apps, right? Let's say that's your blog post and you want to rank for that. And that's what you write a blog about. But so are 10,000 other people, right? And so it's really hard for you to rank in that, especially if you're new or you are just getting started or you don't have a ton of like authority in the platform. But if you will go to YouTube and create a YouTube video about your favorite iPhone apps, and you will sync the two together by embedding the video in the blog post, using the same keywords, using the same title, and really showing Google that these two pieces of content go together, you will rank higher than you would have with one of them only. So there's that element, and then there's the element that you actually can show your face on video in that way. But then also there's the fact that Google or YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. And so you may not be able to rank your blog post ever, but you may be able to skyrocket through the search platforms in YouTube because of the way the algorithm works. So it's just another effort to be able to reach the people you want to reach, and also make them know, like, and trust you really, really quickly, way quicker than they would with just the written word.
I wanted to take a short break to let you know that you can grow your YouTube subscribers with the MiloTree pop-up app. That's right, we integrate with YouTube. If you're trying to grow your subscribers, pause this episode, head to MiloTree.com, sign up for your account, connect your YouTube channel to it so that when people come to your blog, it will pop up and say, subscribe to my channel. That's it. Super simple. So what are you waiting for? You get your first 30 days free, so there is no risk. Sign up now, and now back to the show. Okay, so your recommendation then is to lean into YouTube, and
Yep.
like in my 9 tips, this one of them is consistency. That all of the algorithms want consistent content. It's not like I show up one day a month, put up a bunch of content, leave then for the rest of the month, and then show up again willy-nilly. And it's like you, as you said, if you do 2 videos a week, the algorithm likes you better than even if you just do 1 video a week.
Yeah. I always tell people once a week is the minimum. That's the bare minimum you can possibly get away with on anything like that. So on YouTube, on Google, with your blog, etc., that's the bare minimum. And so if you're wanting to escalate your growth, if you're wanting to go quicker, if you're wanting to have more chances, then the more you can do that, the better. And so once a week is the bare minimum. And I have been on YouTube for, what did I say? Like a little over 3 years, seriously. And I have only missed an upload day a handful of times. And I did not ever miss an upload day until I was established enough on the platform where it wasn't going to hurt me, And of course there's times when I've been sick, or there's times when I traveled and couldn't couldn't get all my ducks in a row before I left, or something happened or whatever. There's definitely things that happen and you're going to get off your schedule, but if you jump right back in, that's the important part. And so, like I say, I've been on it for over 3 years, and maybe a handful of times I've missed a day. And it's very rare. And the next week I'm right back with another video. Like, I don't let it be a series of weeks without videos.
How do you deal, or do you deal with burnout?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually feel like I'm coming off of a period of about a 2-year burnout, which is really interesting and I'll tell you kind of why. And so when I started my business, it was kind of just like, I need money to pay for groceries, or I need money to pay for diapers, right? And then when I got serious about it in 2015, one of the reasons that I got serious was because I saw the potential, right? I saw other people doing what I wanted to do, or other people making good money. And at that moment, we had just downsized our home, and we had a goal of keeping that home we were currently in and buying 30 acres and building a new house. That was our goal. My husband's a farmer. And so he'd always farmed on his parents' land. And so we had this goal that that was the big goal, right? And so we worked, but my business worked towards that for years and years. And we moved in 2 years ago. We bought the 30 acres, we built the house. And that's why I say there's been a 2-year burnout. It's almost like once that was done, I didn't know what I was working towards anymore. And it made me feel disconnected from everything I was doing. I still did it. It's not like I took a 2-year break. I still did it. But I definitely felt burnt out because I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what I should be doing. I felt lost a little bit, and I was just kind of resenting the whole thing. So I definitely experienced burnout, and this has probably been my longest period of burnout. I feel much like this year, 2020 has been a gift for me, just to be able to be home and not travel, because before this I was traveling, 10 times a year speaking at conferences, and that doesn't allow you a lot of time to think, and so it's been great because I feel really connected to my mission and really connected to where I'm going now. But as far as dealing with burnout, my biggest tip is to not push it. Not push yourself to the point where you burn out, if you can possibly do that. So, and the way to do that is to have systems and strategies in place. So creating a YouTube video a week is a lot. Creating 2 YouTube videos a week is a lot. Creating a YouTube video to 2 YouTube videos, a blog post to go with each one of them, and a podcast episode, and being active on social media is a heck of a lot. And that's what I do. And so for me, I couldn't do all of that if I didn't have a team. And I couldn't do all of that if I didn't have systems in place. And my job, like my main job in this business, is to create content, because that is what I do. And my team will handle the rest of it. And so before I had a team, I couldn't have committed to all of that stuff. And I think that's what people do is they're like, well, I need a blog and a podcast and a YouTube video or a YouTube channel and Instagram and this, and I'm a one-woman show. And that's like, it's just not, it's not possible. It is absolutely not possible. And you will burn out quickly. So one, don't set yourself up for burnout. Go one thing at a time, do one thing at a time. And then once you get to the point where you can hire something out, do that. But secondarily to that, have systems in place so that it's kind of just, that's your job. And it doesn't feel like you're rushing to like, oh my gosh, I've got to get a video out. Oh my gosh, I've got to do this. Oh my gosh, I've got to do that. And because when you're rushing, that's when your body is going to be like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do it anymore. So one is to not push yourself to the point of burnout with systems and strategies and not trying to take on too much. But two, when you do get burnout, you're going to be able to keep up with your content because you have those systems and strategies in place. And then when you're not creating content, you can step back and let that be okay. My biggest tip too is you have passive income streams, have diversified income, because for sure in 2018, I think that's the year we built the house. Yeah, 2018. I basically just like, I hope the business keeps going. I just threw my hands in the air. I had too much going on. I couldn't focus on it. But we still needed my money. It's not like I could just stop doing my business. But I had built for 4 years at that point a business that was bringing in income without me having to go out and chase it. And so having those like kind of a nest, you know, that like when you feel burnout, you can just lay down and let your nest take care of you, is great as well. So hopefully those made sense and help in some way.
Absolutely. Now I wanted to talk strategy again, and I wanted to talk about Instagram and how that fits in to your system, like how you think about it. Can you monetize Instagram, or what is it to you?
Yeah, for me, it's not a monetization platform. Now, I will say that when we pitch YouTube sponsorships, sometimes we do pitch social media posts in that. So we'll say, hey, this is the price for YouTube sponsorships, but it also includes, a story mention or whatever. But for the most part, I personally don't monetize it in that way, but it's definitely doable. For me, Instagram is the place where people get to know me beyond the business. That is Instagram for me.
Because they're DMing you, because like what does that mean for you? And how would you recommend others think about Instagram?
Yeah. So what happens is I share the personal stuff on my stories on Instagram. I share business too, but they're getting to see that like I'm outside helping my husband on the farm, or I'm, taking my kids to soccer, or that I'm getting in a fight I got cussed out at Walmart the day before Christmas or 2 days before Christmas. And so I like share those kind of things. And that has nothing to do with my business, but that's getting to know me. Because if they don't like me, they're not going to continue to stay in my ecosystem. They might have found me and liked me for one video, but if they don't know the person behind that video, they're not going to continue to stay. They're not going to go to the podcast. They're not going to get on my email list. They're not going to watch those next 5 YouTube videos. So for me, Instagram, so YouTube is search friendly. YouTube is where they find me. YouTube is where they come in. Like it's the top. Then I point them to Instagram. On every YouTube video, I say, go follow me on Instagram. And on Instagram, then I use that as a way for them to get to know the Jessica behind the business. And that still has business things. It's not like it doesn't. but it's less strict. It's less stringent. It's less put together. Like I say, I show up without makeup on, or I do, weird things. Like my husband and I will do like those weird challenges that people do on TikTok, like try and get up out of the floor with your arms behind your back, or, whatever. I do those types of things on Instagram, and it's a way for me to connect with my audience just on a deep, deep level.
Now, on Instagram, are you also posting to your feed? Are you doing reels? How are you exploring that platform?
Yeah. So the way I explain it is on Instagram, your feed and anything that doesn't expire after 24 hours is a growth strategy. So my feed posts are growth posts. So I post them as if someone's going to find me for the first time. And that's how they'll come into my ecosystem. Same thing with reels. I do reels. I haven't done one in a while, but that's a big part of my strategy right now. And those are also like hoping that people will find that reel and then come into my ecosystem. But my stories are where I nurture them. So basically, every place that someone could find me on the internet, I point them back to my stories. So they could find me on Instagram on the post or the reels, but I want them to watch my stories. They could find me on YouTube and, love me there, but I want them to come to Instagram and watch my stories. Even in my profile on Instagram, I'm like, watch my stories because I want them to watch my stories. And on the podcast, it's not rare, but I mean, it's definitely the lesser of how people find me, to find me on the podcast, like to find me via the podcast app. But sometimes it happens. And so what I do on my podcast is I say, hey, come find me on Instagram. Everything for me right now points back to Instagram. And from Instagram, then I send them where I want them to go. So if they found me on my podcast and they go to Instagram, then in 2 days, I'm going to do a story about the new YouTube video I did. So then I'm going to send them to YouTube. Then they're going to come back, right? Like Instagram is kind of where I house my community, essentially. And that's where we get to know each other. That's where they get to know me. Yes, I'm very active in my DMs. I do not let people DM me and not get an answer, ever. I'm always in there. And that's kind of where we can build that relationship. And then when I have a new opt-in, or when I have a new product, or when I want to launch something, that's kind of the basis of where I share all the details behind that.
Okay. And how many stories a day do you do?
It depends on the day, honestly. But I will say if I go more than 24 hours without a story, I have people DMing me to check on me. They're like, are you okay? I actually had that happen over Christmas. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not on social media right now. But essentially, I would say a good number for me is I at least do 10 a day. It's probably more than that most days. But the good thing about stories is you can keep them active without having to show up every day. So, if I'm really active today on stories, I may not be as active tomorrow, and I might just post a graphic or share a post that I like or something like that and not really show my face as much because I was super active today, and those are going to carry over into tomorrow. So it just kind of depends. I don't think there's a magic number. And sometimes I get entirely too many dots at the top of my stories because I talk for too long, but that's okay because the next few days I may take it a little easier. It's kind of a balance. And my rule is just to never let my bubble go empty.
I love that. Okay, now what about email? Because email is such a powerful way to build that know, like, and trust. What is your email strategy? What do you recommend for other people wanting to grow online businesses?
Yeah, so my blog, my website has about 42,000 different ways to get on my email list. Every single blog post has an opt-in in it. And it's usually a generic one or one I use across the whole platform, but it has an opt-in in the blog post. So if they're coming to read about YouTube, then there might be like a YouTube guide opt-in there for them. There's sidebar ads on my whole website for different opt-ins that we have. On YouTube kind of penalizes you for sending people off the platform too much. And that was a mistake I made in the very beginning of my YouTube journey. Was every video I was like, go get this opt-in, go get this thing. And YouTube, I know that YouTube was penalizing me because as soon as I stopped doing it, my videos were doing way better, And so for that, I kind of tiptoe around that. And so I probably about 10% of my content points off to my email list. However, YouTube is still my top email list growing platform because I have links everywhere. So while I don't verbally say, hey, go try this out or go get this thing, I still have links in my description to opt-ins. I still have a link in my channel art. Like when you come to my channel, there's a link for a digital product starter pack. So if you're wanting to create a digital product and like, make that a part of your income stream, you can download that. That changes from time to time. And I still have old videos. Like those videos stay active. I mean, I have videos that are 3 years old that are still my top performing videos. And so they might have an opt-in in them, even though my last 10 videos didn't. And so they're still growing my list. So my blog and YouTube are my main streams to send people to my email list. But on Instagram, I also have like a highlight bubble of free tools. So I will share my opt-ins there and I will say, hey, here's this thing. And then it's on a highlight bubble. Just yesterday, I got a new camera for YouTube and I've been kind of showing it off on Instagram stories. And just yesterday I was like, oh yeah, I have this camera and I have this camera and I have that camera and I have this one. And I was like showing off all the different iterations of cameras I've used over the years. Because for whatever reason, I've kept them all. I need to sell half of them, but that's not the point. The point is I was showing it off. And as I was saying it, I was like, I know this is a question people have. So the next story, I was like, hey, so as I was talking about that, I know that inevitably someone's going to be like, well, why did you choose that camera over this one? Or why do you use that camera? Why don't you just use your phone or like whatever? And I said, would it be helpful for you guys if I created a guide on like the steps to upgrading your YouTube camera, right? Like, here's where you should start. Here's where you should go next. Because that's an elusive thing. People are just like, like I have this and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I want that. Well,
it's on my Instagram stories right now. So that's what I was going to say. Like they were like, yes, it was like 97% people clicked yes, that they wanted that. And I created it in 30 minutes and not even that long and put all my affiliate links in it and said, hey, go swipe up. I created this for you. But now it's also in my free tools bubble. Mm-hmm. And it will be an opt-in we can use on the blog and the YouTube channel.
So now how often then are you emailing your people on your list?
Yeah. So I actually just took a big hiatus. I took a month between emailing, which is very rare for me. I do usually try and give them a break after I promote something, and I launched something on Black Friday. So there were a ton of emails, coming in. And so I usually try and give them a break. So I'm not immediately emailing them again after I launch, because people are like, whoa, like you're in my space and I don't like it. But in general, I email about once a week. And I don't do a promotional email once a week. It's a get to know me. Let's take this further. Let me tell you what you've missed from the Hey Jessica content. Like, let's talk about this further. And it's usually some kind of advice or tip or tactical thing that people can learn. And then the next week is the same thing. And then that way, when I have time, or when it's time for me to promote, I have provided so much value in the email list that they're not mad at me for then saying, hey, go get this thing, or I have this sale, or, I have this new course, or whatever it is.
What platform do you think is the best for driving sales for you? And if you can extrapolate to other people as well, other content creators or online entrepreneurs, where would you say this is like the bottom of my funnel? This is where people pull out their credit cards to buy from me?
Instagram for me.
Really?
Yeah. It's so personal. It's so personal. I could guarantee you that like 90% of my followers, or 90% of the people who are there actively, would be like, I feel like I know her. I feel like we know each other. I feel like we're always at a table together, or like whatever. And so for me, it's really easy for me, because I'm so used to getting on Instagram and I'm so used to showing up there. It's really easy for me to show up there and be like, hey, I have this new course. I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to tell you all the details. And it feels organic. It doesn't feel pushy. And then they are in a place where I've provided so much value. I don't launch every other day. Like that launch on Black Friday was the first time I've launched anything all year. So I have courses that are selling on Evergreen, but that was like the first launch all year. So it's not like they constantly are getting inundated by me, you know? But for me, it's Instagram. Having the ability to say like the link is in my profile, or giving them a swipe up, or like whatever that, call to action is really great, because it's pointed and it like literally only has one destination. Whereas, so basically the way I see it is that YouTube is kind of the top of my funnel. YouTube and my blog are the top of my funnel. And then as people come in, they get nurtured by my Instagram, but they also get nurtured on my podcast. And then Instagram and email are kind of what causes them to come out the other side, a paying customer. I definitely make sales from email as well, but I will say that this last launch I had, 94% of the sales came from Instagram.
Sending them to a sales page from Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't do a webinar or anything. Now I will say, that's not something I talked about, but normally if I launch a new course that is, over $500, I sell on a webinar, and that is my most effective method. Absolutely. But because I was launching on Black Friday, I couldn't do a webinar, and I, used Instagram to do that. And on the day-to-day, how people buy from me, absolutely, it's through Instagram, because they're going back through my old highlight bubbles, or I'm pointing them somewhere on Instagram and they're like, oh, she has a course about ClickUp, or she has a course about this, and I need to go buy that. And I always keep that like top of frame on Instagram, and that way they remember that they can buy that from me. So it's kind of a lot of things, because I definitely mention things in YouTube and on podcasts and things like that. But as far as the biggest place they buy from me on a day-to-day basis is Instagram.
Oh, I love that. Jessica, what I think is so amazing about what you teach and what you do in your own business is how intentional you are, and that you understand each platform. They're not just these kind of amorphous things you need to be on, but each one serves a very clear purpose for you. And that you're so clear in your own mind about how each one is fitting, how the puzzle pieces all fit together. And I love that you were able to really break it down and explain it, and that it starts with really showing up and putting yourself out there and dealing with your own insecurities, but recognizing that you are your best promotional thing. Like, you've got knowledge, you share that knowledge, and you can monetize that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is just very apropos of what I'm thinking for 2021. Like, you are the perfect guest for this.
Yay, I'm glad.
So if people want to reach out to you, like, where do you send them to kind of get into your funnel?
Instagram. Yep. If you want to get in touch with me, Instagram DMs are the most direct way to do that. If you comment on a YouTube video.
So what is tell people what
it's my name, at Jessica Stansberry. So, it's my name. So when you see that on the episode title here, it's the same spelling, at Jessica Stansberry. And that's where you can go and actually get in touch with me. I will answer your DMs. See, the problem is with YouTube, if somebody goes back and comments on a video from 3 years ago, I'm never going to see it. Like, I'm just never going to see it. It gets lost in the notifications. And so to build that community is to have a place to contact me directly. And I don't have a Facebook group anymore. I don't want a Facebook group. I had one a few years ago. Email is a disaster. And so I always tell people, like, if you want to get in touch with me, come to Instagram. That is how we can have a two-way conversation, because I think that's really important to your brand.
Wow. I think that is terrific. Well, I just have to say, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
I hope you liked this episode. I thought it was really eye-opening and very apropos of 2021. We are starved for connection. If you can show up, show your face, connect with your audience, there is nothing you can't do. So please step in front of your blog, step in front of your business, and it's kind of like greeting people at the door. Before I go, one last reminder. Please join my Facebook group. Pause the episode right now. Head to Facebook, search for Blogger Genius. You will find my group called the Share and Grow Your Blog Traffic group. I would love to meet you in there. And I'll see you here again next week.